most people. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody out there who is now tuning into the Uneducated Economist to find out what it is that's taking place within the inflationary scenario that is now out of control. And really, this comes down to a labor paradox that we are now experiencing. So, most people who understand the Federal Reserve are looking at it from a position from years ago, decades ago, really, on how it is that the Federal Reserve conducted themselves. Now, there was a time when the Federal Reserve would attempt to try and raise an inflationary scenario by creating a situation in which that the labor market would be stronger. Hold on one second here. I think I need to turn off my Wi-Fi. Creating a stronger labor market, you would find that the people out there would get these new jobs. By getting the new jobs, they would get their increase in pay and eventually start moving that into purchasing, consuming, and eventually that would be the aggregate demand that the Federal Reserve would be looking for. This would essentially increase the inflationary scenario through supply-demand imbalances. So again, the Fed would lower interest rates, not just to get people out there buying, right, to go out there and buy houses, cars, and go on vacation, but to essentially get corporations to go out there and borrow that money and invest into their business, which would eventually be hiring people. And that hiring people is what the Federal Reserve would look for to create the inflationary scenario. Now, all things being equal, they would also raise rates to slow down on this investment, slow down on hiring, and eventually create a situation in which that the unemployment would begin to rise. This would slow down the consumption. The supply-demand imbalances would then come in more in equilibrium, and then you would find that the inflationary pressures would then be alleviated. Now, this is typical of the Federal Reserve's behavior, but it's changed. They no longer conduct themselves this way. And now what we find here is this paradox that we're going to find with labor market, because there was a time when the Fed was very much focused in on labor, saying, okay, if we lower the unemployment, we'll create inflation. If we raise the unemployment, we'll push the inflation down. However, after the great financial crisis and the economy was running with historically low unemployment, remember, from the Obama administration all the way through Trump's first administration going into COVID, we had historically low unemployment numbers. They all bragged it up saying it was awesome, but it did not create the inflationary scenario that the Federal Reserve was looking for. This is the problem that we now face. The labor market is no longer functioning for the Fed in the way that they used to do it. They used to do it in a way that would create an inflationary scenario, but it doesn't create the inflationary scenario like it used to. You can have the people working as hard as they want, as much money as they want to bring in. It doesn't matter. Their income, no matter how much they work or how many people are doing it, is not enough. People don't recognize this today. See, now you find it in reality out there. I mean, just think about it. The CEO of McDonald's is saying that there's this two-tier economy taking place. I left a link down in the description for it. I mean, how long have I been describing this? Saying that 20% of the people, the top 10% of the people, they're the ones doing all the consumption. Everybody else is wondering why it's so difficult out there. And I think to myself, man, there shouldn't be no surprise to the people that this is happening if you have read the Cantillon essay, because it describes it perfectly. All right? If you have a higher standard of living, you will lose your manufacturing base to foreign competition. Are we not recognizing that today? People say, oh man, but you can do something about that. You can subsidize and tariff and have all this government intervention. And I'm saying, is there any examples of that? And people say, yeah, Germany. And I'm thinking, are they doing well right now with their manufacturing base? Because it seems to be leaving. All the government interventions over the last decade failed them now. It will take ever increasing amounts of government intervention in order to prevent the inevitable outcome of those manufacturers leaving, and they will be left with no real good middle class possibilities. Very much like what we're experiencing here. There is no example of a nation that can revive their manufacturing without ever increasing amounts of government intervention, which will eventually fail them, and the underlying economic forces will show themselves, very much like what's happening in Germany. You know, people say, well, what about places like Switzerland or Sweden or something like that? You know, we got these nations that are ever increasingly high standard of living with no real loss of their manufacturing. I'm thinking, well, those are very niche economies with luxurious items that they are manufacturing that nobody else really manufactures to that level, right? And that's small. There's not like they're world economic powers that, overwhelm the consuming that's happening out there. They're a niche economy. So they can get away with it for the time being, but eventually somebody's going to be making those watches and all those precision instruments and everything else as well as they are, and they're going to do it cheaper. And when that happens, you're going to find them falling into the same inevitable outcome as everybody else does. Understanding this to be the case, yeah, you can do all kinds of government intervention and they will try, but it's not like it will be successful. There's no example of it being successful. And then recognizing now that the two-tier economy where you have 80% of the people wondering what it is that they could possibly do to have a decent standard of living considering their day job sucks and it's not enough. And you got the other 20% of the people who are absolutely killing it out there, increasing their consumption, especially the top 10%. So what is it that's going to happen out there when you have this paradox taking place, where if you lower the inflation or lower the interest rates in order to save the labor market, but the inflationary scenario is going to ramp up because of the lower interest rates, supposedly because the top 10% of the income out there, or asset holders, there we go. The top 10% of people who are holding the assets will have an increase in their asset prices, as the inflationary scenario only really benefits them. Everybody else has to suffer the consequences as their wages become less purchasing power from it. I don't know what it is that people expect the government to do in order to fix it, but there is really nothing that can happen at this point. I mean, they might be able to alleviate the pain for some people for some time, but it's not going to last forever, and there's no example of that taking place. Even those luxurious experiences that are coming from particular niche economies with high luxury items that they sell will eventually lose their manufacturing base as well. It's only a matter of time. Recognizing it and seeing it for what it is then gives you the ability to do something about it. But the idea that there's going to be government intervention that's going to help, maybe for a minute, yeah, but that's not everlasting, and it won't be everlasting. There's no example of it taking place. So I suggest to the people that you recognize it for what it is and that you position yourself accordingly for it. It's not like you don't know that it's happening, right? I mean, you can see the complaints about it all day long. So it's not like you don't know what's happening. And instead of like believing that there is something that can be done by an administration, there is something that you can do. I love it how people get argumentative with me when I say, hey man, you better figure this thing out. It's like, we're all headed down this road together, and it seems like a bunch of these people are falling off a cliff. Do you think maybe we should veer off to the side a little bit? Just saying. Like, I mean, just look ahead. I mean, I'm not going to try and guide all these people into a different direction, but I can certainly guide myself into a different direction. And if I see people running off this cliff saying, hey man, we better not run off the cliff, and I'm thinking to myself, well, we can move out of the way. We don't have to do this. And everybody says, oh no, man, you have to be part of this. Join in on the team, vote for the right person, and then we can move this whole herd out of the way. And I'm thinking, yeah, good luck with that, guys. I don't know if that's really going to work. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to recognize how it is that people are behaving, thinking, and acting, and then wonder what it is that I could do in order to benefit myself, considering what it is that everybody is saying is taking place out there. Because a lot of people are really coming up with some pretty unreasonable expectations of what it is that I believe the government is even capable of doing. And when you don't have that expectation of them anymore, then you just kind of say, okay, well, maybe I'll just look at it for what it is and then try to position myself accordingly for it. If there's going to be ever increasing amounts of separation between the rich and the poor, I probably shouldn't be buying into luxurious experiences unless I'm rich. And if I'm not rich, then there's no point in buying a luxurious experience whatsoever, right? Unless, well, I deserve a decent life. Okay, well, go buy that, fancy car and make all those payments and then wondering where house life is such a struggle for you. I don't know. Maybe that's a good life for you. But ultimately, if you are not part of the top 20%, there's no point in you even trying to buy into a luxurious experience. You should be buying into nothing but production and savings for yourself. Yeah, to recognize that the moment that you lapse into luxury, it will be an eventual decline from it. But if you move into production and savings, postponing your luxurious experience so that you can secure a decent rate of interest beyond that of your occupation, and you do that for your entire young adulthood, I guarantee you by the time you get into retirement age, you are going to be very thankful and happy with your sacrifice and your discipline that you had gone through. But if you're 40, 50 years old and you are sitting in a position in which that you have nothing, it's very difficult, you struggle every single day, you're drinking a lot, you have, no social connections whatsoever out there, then you're probably going to look at the world in a very depressive state, and I guarantee you that will be delivered to you. All right? Again, it's how you're leading yourself. It's not a matter of anybody else. We did a video talking about it yesterday. And to believe that manufacturing is going to be led back into this country because you're going to bully people around is just like, does that sound like that's going to work? To say it to yourself, I'm going to force people into making manufacturing come back instead of just hoping that we have an economic environment that is inviting for manufacturing. No, that's not inviting. Bullying people around is not inviting. What it is you're going directly against the underlying economic forces that will eventually manifest themselves into a losing of that manufacturing base again. Right? Very little doubt in my mind. Let's go check out this $5 super chat real quick. We got $5 coming from Daniel. Thank you so much for the $5. Inflation makes those who own assets richer and those who do not poorer. That's right. And that's why I'm telling people to recognize that's the fact. Right? That every time you buy a car with a payment that is going to take all that money and like insurance and gas and everything that you have to put into this vehicle. And I'm thinking a lot of people spend $1,000 a month to drive their car around. All right. $1,000 a month. And I'm thinking, holy moly, I got this old Suburban and I don't even know, the majority of it is in gas, because it's a big old truck. I don't even come close to $1,000 a month. Right. And the best part about this thing is somebody smashes into it and I may not even notice. You see how my expectation of this vehicle is so low, and the only thing I really have for an expectation is that the heater turns on and the wipers turn on and I can get to work. That's it. After that, I just, very low. And so with this attitude about my vehicle, it gives me a lot of abundance of money that is not going to a vehicle that I can then put into capital investments that have some sort of return to it. And that's the position I need to take in order to combat the fact that my day job will not be enough. It's not enough. I have to do so much more in order to acquire what it is that I feel that I need to have a decent life with my family. And a decent life to me is just really just paying my bills on time. I don't ask for much, but I do have to work pretty hard for it, I have to put in a lot of effort for it. Infamous NYC, thank you so much for the $2. Communism, a common, they will beg for it. Yeah. Oh, communism a coming, yeah. They will beg for it. And that's, and that's really what it's going to take. If you think about it, all the nations that have tried to take control of their manufacturing, take it away from the people themselves, are really are attempting to prevent the people from moving into a luxurious experience. You think about it, it was just all these nations that took it, and I have all these suppressed people, and they live in these apartments or whatever, these concrete apartments, and it's very depressed looking and all that other stuff. They're really trying to prevent the people from raising their standard of living and making their manufacturing base uncompetitive. That's really what it comes down to. People don't recognize it because it takes so long. It takes generations of this happening. People look at it in such a short period. They're like, well, think about this 10-year period. And I'm like, 10 years? Can you really base your life around 10 years? So you had 10 really good years of government intervention that allowed the rise of the middle class because they were preventing the underlying economic forces from really showing themselves. And the moment that they could no longer do it anymore and would take ever increasing amounts of taxes or austerity measures or something of that nature in order to, keep themselves positioned as competitive, only to find that they're going to lose it anyway. Why did it happen? It's because our standard of living is just far too high. If your standard of living is high, you're earning a lot of money, you're going to have expensive electricity, all the expensive input costs, land costs, taxes, all that other stuff that comes with it. So people will say, well, it's not just wages, it's all the input costs that go into it, like tax, and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's because your wages are so high. That's how come the property taxes are high. That's how come the property values are high. That's how come all the input costs and energy costs are high. It's all this stuff is high. And evidence of that is with wages as well. All right. And all of that is the high standard of living. Once you see it in that fashion, then you just look around and you're like, man, how is it that you can be competitive against another nation out there who's willing to sleep on the ground? You can't. There's just no way. I mean, you can try, you can intervene, you can do all kinds of stuff to say, hey, we're going to, invest $1 billion, $100 billion into this particular thing. And I'm thinking, okay, so you're going to invest $1 billion, $100 billion, however many billions of dollars it's going to take into bringing manufacturing back. Here's this chip plant over in Ohio, struggling like hell to figure out how it is that they're going to complete this thing, and then whether or not they're even going to be competitive against Taiwan and Singapore or whoever it is that's making them chips. Right? I mean, those people are building them right now, and they're like full tilt boogie, and they don't have high wages going into their input costs. So I don't know what it is that they plan on doing other than throwing a bunch of money at something that is probably going to struggle the entire time. All right. Let's see. What's your guess on the Fed's rate decision at this point? 25, 50 basis points down or hold steady? It doesn't really matter, Joshua. It doesn't really matter at this point what it is that they are going to do. It's the message that is delivered with it, right? Because they can cut 25 basis points or 50 basis points and then deliver a message with it that either has an easing or tightening financial conditions that come with it. People just automatically think a cutting of a quarter or 50 basis point from the Federal Reserve is an automatic easing of financial conditions within the economy. That is absolutely incorrect. There is nothing that is further from the truth. To understand it that way is literally taking it from an old playbook from about 15, 20 years ago. We have to now incorporate the new idea, which is using their words of deployment in order to create the financial conditions in which it is that they are looking for. We cover that in Philip Jefferson's speech, talking about how they use textual analysis to guide Marco, whatever. Hold on, let me give you the accurate speech name. Gosh darn it, hold on. And in that, I bring it up quite a bit, and that's why I constantly bring it up, is because it doesn't matter what the interest rate cut is. It doesn't matter. It's the message that they deliver with it. That is the important part, and I have reiterating that, because if you just think about the last time they cut 50 basis points and everybody was like looking for lower mortgages, what happened? It was exactly the opposite. Mortgages went up. However, they are delivering a message right now that they are going to cut going into the future. It's lowering mortgage rates right now. They haven't done anything yet, right? But the financial markets are easing as of this moment. We're finding that taking place. So now, when we listen to what it is that the Federal Reserve is going to say going into the future about these speeches, about these interest rates, there we go. We have to listen to what they had said in these speeches. Now, let me bring it up here again. Jefferson, February 21st, 2025, reading between the lines, textual analysis and central bank communications. So again, this is a question that I get a lot. Are they going to cut, or, how much are they going to cut, and what kind of impact is that going to have? And I say to them every single time, it doesn't matter. What matters is the message that they deliver with it. That is the key to it. Because using textual analysis, high-frequency asset price data, and high-frequency central bank communication data, this research shows that investors' reaction to specific sentences communicated by the central bank are quickly incorporated into asset prices. The communication that they are using, that's the important part. Right? Goes on to say, policymakers know that their communications are likely to affect the course of short-term interest rates. Their communications are likely to affect the short-term interest rates, other asset prices, and the associated economic outlook, resulting in an easing or tightening of financial conditions. That has to be the focus of your attention. If you are looking at the interest rates as being the tool, that them lowering the Fed funds rate, that's the tool, you're missing it. You're missing it right now because if you notice, the communication is already easing financial conditions. Mortgage rates are coming down. U.S. 10-year is coming down. All these things are coming down. If they deliver a message that it is going to impact the economy one way or the other, that message that they deliver with this interest rate cut, that is the key to this. If that message is a general supporting of the economy, most likely what you are going to find is inflationary pressures that come from that, right? If what you are seeing is them being caught, trying to deal with a crisis situation, like they are panic kind of position, like we got to hurry up and do this because we got problems, right? If it's not just generally supporting the economy, what you will find is a tightening of financial conditions, right? You'll see deflationary pressures coming from that, or disinflationary pressures is what I should say. That communication is so critical to this because this is like, and it's not even me, like where was it this was said? Hold on. God, I'm trying to remember what speech now. I can't bring it up because I can't recall it because I don't know. All right, let's go into this. We got, let me bring it back up here. We had the infamous NYC. All right, communism and Beckford. And then we have Design My City Survival. Thank you so much for these $10 super chat. Where is this? We're doing indiscriminate deportation. Yes, close the border, but why deport the people who work on farms, construction, etc.? I feel like we're creating a mess. Now, here's the thing. Design My City Survival. Thank you so much for the $10. I was thinking about this the other day. You realize that their manufacturing base is moving somewhere. Like it's leaving China now because of their high standard of living, and it's going to places like India and Vietnam and even Mexico, right? And so now I think about that, the manufacturing base moving to Mexico. And then we got skilled labor up here being deported. Huh. It makes me wonder what's going on here really. It's like manufacturing in Mexico would have a very difficult time if it didn't have some skilled labor there. But if you deport the skilled labor from the United States into Mexico, well, there's your boys, right? You don't need to go and educate a bunch of them. You got them right here. There you go. You can have them back. Just saying. I mean, would they make that choice on their own? Probably not, right? I mean, I don't know if they would make that choice on their own. But, you know, if you want to deport them, they go back home and then, you know, because they've been deported and they find back home, there's this new factory being built. And it was just like, well, good manufacturing job, right? Just saying. I don't know. You know, but that's how my conspiratorial mind works. Right? What is the results of this? I mean, we got manufacturing that is not coming back to the United States, but there does seem to be investment going on in Mexico. And in order to really have a good manufacturing nation, you have to have skilled labor. But if all the skilled labor went up and started working in the United States, got trained and figured it all out and know what they're doing up there, and you deport them down to Mexico back home, and there's a factory job right there waiting for them. Why, like, I'm just saying, I don't know. All right. You're right. They will need workers with experience. A massive solid-state battery plant is being built in Liberty. You know, you're going to see the attempt, right? What I am saying is like, how effective will that really be in the end? Like, you can see you can go and attempt to build a manufacturing of these semiconductors in Ohio. And you can throw billions of dollars at it and say, hey, the government intervention is going to bring this good manufacturing job to it. And then they go to do it and they realize this is going to be hard. This is going to take ever increasing amounts of this. Even if we did complete this, is it going to be profitable against the other people who are building these very same things? Right? That question is like, that's a very big question. Nobody really knows the answer to that. I mean, you can be wishful and hopeful that, hey, we can build this plant here and it's going in right there, and you get it all built and you get it up in operation. We invest all this time and effort and money into it, and the product starts to come out, and you go to sell it, and it's just like, man, we are not competitive. How are we going to sell this? Well, the government's going to have to come in and buy your product. So it's going to take ever increasing amounts of government subsidies and intervention of buying your product. Like, who is this really benefiting? This is where I kind of getting at. If you're not profitable at what you're doing and it takes government intervention, the moment that government gets out of the way, boom, there goes your job. It's gone. Goes right overseas to somebody else who is competitive. That's not a good economy. That's not a strong economy. That is a very fragile economy. That's one that's teetering on the edge. All right, just pull your bootstraps. That's all you got to do. All right, don't. You know what? In fact, it's better that you don't, because if you don't, then I don't have that much competition. Like, see, if everybody was doing it the same and pulling and trying and figuring it all out and starting their businesses and hustling, then I would have a lot of competition out there, and I'd be like, dang, man, this is hard. Competing against everybody else is doing it. But if nobody else is doing it, man, there's no competition. Go for it. Right? I mean, you get to do whatever you want if you can figure it out, because everybody else is sitting around drinking beer trying to figure out what it is that the government's going to do to save them. You know? Let's go check out this super chat from Chicken Live 336. Thank you so much for the $1.99. Might be profitable once robots are working. You know, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be profitable to the individual person, because you're no longer going to be close to the money anymore. See, if robots are doing it, I've thought about this too. If AI is coming in, like, how is it as an average everyday dude standing on the street saying, hey, what is it that I'm going to do in order to make some money in this economy? And if you can't go and do the job that the robot is doing, who is it that's making the money that the robot is doing the work? Like, it's the person who owns the robot. So if you don't own that robot, or you're not invested in the company that owns the robot, then where is it that you're going to get your new money from? Well, it's going to have to come from this guy just literally handing it to you saying, here, go buy my product. Right? Like, how does that work? Is there any kind of real production in anything that's coming from that, other than just like, here, let's, take care of the people who can't take it? It's like literally like taking care of the sheep. Yeah, right. I mean, they can't take care of themselves, so here's some money, go buy my product. But that's not a profitable way of conducting yourself. You have to find somebody else out there who's willing to trade their goods and services and natural resources in their attempt for somebody else who's doing somewhat of the similar thing. Right? And if you're not part of that, then you're going to be literally waiting for the scraps. Right? Please give me something, because I don't have anything that I'm doing that is productive and useful to this world. So ultimately, if you are not part of the idea of saying, hey man, I'm going to invest into this so that I can get the profit that is going to come from the experience of this robot doing the work, like if you're not invested into that part of it, then where is it that you're going to get the new money from if this is to take place? You're going to have to wait for them to literally hand it to you or something of that nature. So if that's what is happening, then you're going to see like this ever increasing divide, which is happening. I mean, I guess people could say it in that fashion, but I'm not sitting around waiting for that experience to take place. Like, I recognize my job is being phased out. Like, even my job at work as a salesman, I was talking about this the other day. I got portals that I order everything through. Like all these online portals, whether it's a door or a window or hardware or metal or whatever it is that I'm ordering, I can go right to this portal and click, fill in the little boxes, and then hit send, right? And then get my product in a matter of a few days. There is no real need for me to be the one clicking the mouse. The customer could do that directly. Like, fill in all the blanks. Like, I want a window this size, this color, this style, this open, all the other things. And then they're telling me that. All I'm doing is taking what they're telling me and putting it into the computer. All right? And so if they just phase me out, which is very easy to do through these portal systems for ordering all these building materials, I really do see that in a matter of a few years, I'm really not going to be needed. It's just a matter of time. So I'm not worried about that. Like, I'm not scared. I mean, I see it happening. I mean, every day. In fact, I'm like, you got another portal? Cool, let's download it. Get me signed up. Let's get this thing rolling. Because the faster we get this thing over with, the easier it will be for me to move on. But the longer, like, people try to deny it and prevent it and, keep it from happening and stuff like that, it's just like, oh God, just keep dragging this pain out. Why? I remember one time I had a contractor say, hey, dude, this is the last one. We're not going to do any more projects after this. I'm going to kind of call it quits for a while and, take care of my dying grandma, whatever, right? It was just like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And so we were all like, oh man, this is the last project. It was kind of all of a sudden. And I remember one of the guys saying, we should drag this thing out as long as we can. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm knocking this thing out and out of here, man. I am not sitting around waiting for nothing to happen after this. So we're going to get this thing done and get moving on out of here, man. Like, let's knock this thing out because there's no point in being here anymore. Right? There's no point in being here. Let's get this project finished and get out of here. This isn't like, we should have been in this mindset anyway, but now I'm just doubling it up, getting it done, right? Just to get out of here. And because I don't need to drag it out anymore. I need to go find something new, something that's going to actually, be something useful and hopeful and, working. So this is kind of like how I see things. I don't want it to be like, hey man, can we figure out a way just to maintain this? And I was just like, maintain it. No, man, if it ain't growing, if we're not advancing, if it's not moving forward, then no, there's no point in like trying to just maintain this thing, right? We got to figure out a position in which that we can actually advance and make happen. Keep expenses low and income high. The rest will take care of itself. It kind of does, Joshua. I agree. The idea that you can keep your expenses low and your income high, I think just doing that, having that discipline in general, will then you'll just start seeing the appropriate path to go down. Like if you just automatically have that mindset that you are going to increase your income and lower your expenses and, just be focused in on that, I just think it would be a natural thing happening to you that you would just see where the next right step is. Whether it's going into rental properties or investing in the stock market or starting a business or going to school or doing something. I think that with that sort of discipline that you will just automatically, subconsciously just be guiding yourself into the right direction. Most hired by temp agencies. No more sovereignty here. This looks like a third world country from when I grew up, and I don't see this getting any better amongst kings. And see, I don't see it that way. All I see is just opportunity all over the place. If restaurants became robotic, good luck making a living. I say good luck making a living unless you are the owner of the restaurant. Okay, Wick, there we go. Wick, thank you so much for the $2 Canadian. What manufacturing jobs would come back to the U.S.? I don't see manufacturing jobs coming back to the U.S., and I don't know which ones could possibly come back to the United States. I don't see that being the case, right, at all. I mean, just look at the ones that they were attempting to do. It's not working out very well. Like, the only thing that I could see that would bring manufacturing back to the United States is a lower standard of living. That's it. Or time. Lots and lots and lots of time to let other nations try to raise their standard of living to the point that you can now compete against them. The only problem with that theory is that there will be other nations beyond them who will then be increasing their skill sets, which will be the competition that you would be against. So it doesn't matter. At this point, if you have raised your standard of living, you're essentially hopeless. That is the lapse into luxury. It will be an eventual decline. To fix the situation is incredible discipline amongst the individual for generations of people saying that we're going to hold back on luxurious experiences, increase our income, pay off debt, move all the extra money, the money beyond the money you're already making, into more production and savings. This is everybody doing this, disciplined for generations of people. And then maybe then, right, you might have some sort of economic environment in which that you can have that good standard of living again from the jobs that are created here in the United States. But until that happens, it's not going to be that way. I mean, think about it right now. The consumer is not even 80% of the people anymore. It's the top 10. Top 10% of the people do close to 50% of the consumption. In the 90s, it was like 30% of the consumption. Do you think this is reversing? That the top 10% of the people are going to do less consumption in the future, or do you think it's going to continue this way? Probably going to continue. right? Because that's the direction in which that it's headed. So if you have the top 10% of the people doing 50% of the consumption, it's probably safe to say that the next 10% of the people after the first 10% is probably doing an additional 50% of the remaining consumption. All right, so the top 20% of the people are doing something like 70% of the consumption. The bottom 80% of the people are simply insignificant. They really just don't matter anymore. There was a time when they did, right? Because the middle class was the consumer. So a middle class job where, the average everyday dude was out there working and paying his bills and raising his family and consuming for the household and buying all the stuff, this was the focus. This was the focus of the Federal Reserve. If you could lower interest rates and get corporations to hire people, it would increase that middle class. The middle class would be like, woo, look, we got money. Let's go out there and spend this money, right? They spend that money and then the consuming would increase the aggregate demand, which is what it was that the Federal Reserve was looking for to begin with, right? So this was the focus of the Federal Reserve back in the day, but there's a problem with this now is that if you noticed after the great financial crisis, the labor market got incredibly tight. Unemployment fell and inflation didn't rise. Not in the way that the Federal Reserve wanted it. Like you can look at asset prices and say, well, there's all the inflation. It was like, yeah, okay, the top, household incomes, they did really well. But the inflationary scenario the Federal Reserve was looking for after the great financial crisis did not manifest itself in the way that people had anticipated it would. And so when you look at the labor market being broken to the Federal Reserve, in which that a tight labor market doesn't increase the inflationary scenario like they used to imagine it, now, who are they going to focus in on? Who are they going to focus in on in order to increase aggregate demand? They lowered interest rates. Everybody went to work. They looked over at aggregate demand and they said, where the hell is it? Where is all that hardworking American people who used to go and get a job and then start spending that money into the economy to increase aggregate demand? Where is it? The Federal Reserve is like, it's gone. Who's doing all the consuming? This little group at the very top, 20% of the people. Well, how do we get them to consume? How do we get the top 20% of the people to consume out there? Because obviously, if we try and get people to go to work, that ain't going to do it. They're dead saturated, and even if they got a raise, their wages aren't enough to keep up with the problems that we are now facing with an inflation and the high cost of living and everything that goes with it. Their wages can't keep up. How does the Federal Reserve increase aggregate demand if they cannot do it through the labor market? Oh, well, maybe if we increased asset prices and cash flow with high interest rates to the top 20%, they can increase their consumption. Yep, that's what's happening. That is what is occurring. Now, whether or not they planned it, that's what's happening, right? They want to have manufacturing come back so we can have a good, strong middle class. Is that what's occurring? No, that is not occurring. What is occurring is high interest rates, increasing asset prices, and increasing cash flow for the top 20% of the people who are doing 70% of the consumption. There we go. Federal Reserve found their inflationary scenario working for them at the top 20%, while 80% of the people are going, how come they don't do anything for us down here? How come it's so difficult? How come it is that the politics say that they're going to help, but then they never help? And I'm thinking, dude, because they don't care about you at all. Insignificant to their consequences. The top 20% are the most important thing to them now. There was a time when your average, everyday, working class, middle class, manufacturing job was important to them. It's not important to them. The only thing that's important to them is that you don't riot. So they may feed you some subsidies and some idea of government help or something of that nature. Eventually people will probably be calling it UBI, but that's really just, riot prevention, right? I remember, oops, well, that one went away. Okay. Mike, it's not a video, it's a live stream. Who is wrong again? What is Mike saying? What did Mike say? Where's he at? I want to hear it. That sounds good. Did he delete his comment? I can't find it. Bummer. All right. What up, all-nighter? All right. How's the socialized medicine treating you? What's socialized medicine? All right. The figure of speech. Okay. Just got to the party. Right on. Interest rates will spike soon. They cannot control it. No one wants debt anymore. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Hold on. All right. Let me guess. Lumber supply is blah, blah, blah. And the sky is falling. Complete economic collapse is just around the corner. I haven't watched the video, but this guy has been wrong for years. Oh, well, Mike obviously. Okay, so now I see what you're talking about, All-Nighter. What did All-Nighter say in response? Mike, it's not a video, it's a live stream. Who was wrong again? Simon, have you ever tried cannabis water? I just tried it. It's pretty interesting for a Sunday afternoon. No. I haven't tried cannabis water. All right, I remember the Titanic and how it sank. Fatal wound. Yeah, right. You know, it's funny because if you think about it, if they didn't try to react to it and just rammed into it, they might have actually like been okay. But it was because they like scratched the holes all through the side of the ship that eventually sank. So it's kind of interesting to think like what would have happened if they didn't even see the iceberg and just ran smashed right into it. You know, it'd probably screw up a lot of things, but would the boat have sank? You know, it's kind of interesting to think. You know, doing nothing at all, no reaction, just let it hit you and figure out what to do afterwards. Man, that's a hell of a plan, isn't it? Because you almost think like, no, doing something is better than nothing, but doing something in that case was the worst thing possible. You know, I mean, doing nothing at all might have been a different outcome. We don't know. I don't know why that's funny. That's not funny. Oh, all right. Are we done for the day? What do we got going on here? Freedom is dangerous, yeah. All asleep to the truth. You guys are all asleep to the truth. All right. I like how no one mentions that it's the only going me surfing. Huh. Stuff sold for food is actually poisonous. Life is about self-control, and I think moderation is a good test of willpower. You can't have your cake and eat it too. The only one that can is the big man in DC, or at least he thinks so, can have a ravenous Wall Street plus whatever left for labor. Can't have a ravenous Wall Street. I don't know. I need another coffee. Yeah, mine's getting cold. Um, I don't know. You can have your cake and eat it too. Why not? I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily true, man. Like, I think a lot of times people just have their expectations of what it is that they think that they need in their life. Like, I don't know how many times that, I mean, especially years ago, like I've learned to let go of a lot of stuff. Like, you guys got to understand, like, I have a huge ego. Like, I've come to recognize that if things don't go down a particular path, if they don't go this way, if this one way, then I start getting frustrated and upset, thinking, okay, the whole world's coming undone. Letting go of that has been one of the most difficult challenges in my life. The more I do it, the more I realize the abundance flows to me very naturally, right? Literally, your ego builds walls of preventing things from actually coming into your life the way that they really should, that very natural occurring way, because you have planned it out in your head that it has to look this particular way. If it doesn't go down this particular way, then it's wrong and I'm going to fight against it, right? The moment that I realized that's what I was doing, and I still do it today, and I have to recognize when it happens, when that happens and I am able to finally recognize it, internalize it, and let it go, I find that the abundance that I was looking for starts to flow in. And it usually comes from a direction I was not anticipating. Like almost always it comes from a direction I was not anticipating. Right. And it's so weird to think on how this works, right? That the moment it becomes important to you and you really, really want it, it means that I'm really, really going to prevent it from happening because of this really, really wanting it, egotistical mindset that builds up the walls to prevent it from actually occurring. Talk about a paradox. That's the one, right? And most people face this. Almost everybody faces it. Yeah. I mean, I still deal with it today, and recognizing it is actually a benefit to my life. I'm glad when it happens. So it's like, okay, here it is again. I get to look at it, face it, and then realize I can let something go to hopefully let it in. You know? All right, we got Infamous NYC, $5. You already see people in Chicago begging for martial law, cheering Trump while deports people, and you hear him say, "Can we deport Americans too?" You got good manufacturing job in Mexico. I mean, Mexico can be, there's beautiful places in Mexico. Deporting wouldn't be that bad. I don't know. Like, I'm just thinking, you know, this is like, I just got to think of the consequences from that. It was just like, you're going to send me to an area that has a rise in manufacturing, which is going to be the rise of a middle class, which is probably going to be a better society than one is trying to hold on to a middle class and finding themselves in deterioration because the separation between the rich and the poor. And I'm thinking, well, which one of these is going to be better? I mean, do I want to try and face the facts that I have to get myself on the other side of the wedge by working incredibly hard in order to just have something that is just simple, what would be a simple, simple thing in my life, where you can go to Mexico and that's where they're actually going to be rising into that condition? And I'm thinking, which one of these is the better place to be, right? I mean, I like the luxurious experience of being in America, but, then again, my kids might have a much better time in an area that has a rising middle class through good manufacturing jobs. Deportation doesn't sound that bad, you know? I mean, to be honest, just from what I know of the economy. All right. Joshua Burns, you don't control anything. The corporations took it from you, and you're a coward not to admit that. Wow. Huh. It has never been to Chicago. We give Trump the finger. We just flew back from Chicago. Didn't spend any time out there, though. Huh. So somehow, okay, this is what I found funny. Let's see, you don't control anything. The corporations took it from you, and you're a coward for not to admit it. Um, this is something that I find very interesting, is that when I was very deep into the conspiratorial mindset of the New World Order taking over and controlling everything and screwing everything up and making everybody's life miserable, and I knew for sure that's how my world was existing because of them and doing that, the results of it was exactly that. So I know the mindset that Kevin is in, that he knows for a fact that these corporations have deteriorated his life. He has no hope. There is no chance of survival through this, and it's all their fault. And this is the same thing that I used to go through when I was a conspiratorial mindset person. Like, don't get me wrong. All those conspiratorial rabbit holes that most people go down to, the majority of them are true. Like, I dove down a lot of them, and I found that, man, this is a dark, depressive world out there, and there is some real hell to pay. Right? Here's the problem. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do except for make decisions based on what it is with the information that you have received. That stuff is incredibly heavy to take in. You know that? You know how depressive that stuff is? You know how that's going to make your life feel and look like when this is the information that you are taking in on a daily basis, where everything you see is a deterioration of your freedoms and the separation is just going even more, and you can just pinpoint every single moment of every single day that this is occurring? Don't tell me that that's not going to deteriorate your life, because that's exactly the life that I lived. And I was wondering at 40 years old why I was so deep in debt, why I had no options, why I had nothing going on in my world, and I knew for a fact that it wasn't my fault. I knew it. I could tell you all day long about it. Do you think that I have a good economics channel talking uneducated economist stuff from a working class point of view? If I was to flip this around and go into a conspiratorial mindset and start diving down rabbit holes, you know how entertaining I can make that? I could tell you all about being a sovereign citizen and how it is that they use your birth certificate and social security number to enslave you. Right? I could go down those roads and I could talk all day long about it. That ain't going to benefit you none. Understanding it is a good thing to do, But to believe it, that it is going to somehow benefit you in a way that if you just keep a hold of it and keep focused in on it and just never once ever deteriorate or deter, what am I trying to say? Detour away from this idea that there is going to be this ever increasing amounts of government intervention on your life and this globalism that's going to separate the rich from the poor, and you know exactly how it's happening. If you continue to hold on to this thing, then you will experience that. What I find very interesting about it is that a lot of people have a difficult time letting it go because it's almost like as if it's their friend. Like if they let go of this thing, they're letting go of something that is very deeply connected to them. Like if they let it go, the whole world will come undone because they have this constant attention paid to this particular idea. I guarantee you the world will not come undone if you let go of it. It won't. If you start thinking of positioning yourself in a way that has a return, that says, I don't have to continue to go deeper into debt, that I have skills that are helpful and useful to this world, if you start putting yourself into that mindset and then literally give the finger to the New World Order and say, dude, you don't hold me back. I know who you are. Come for it, man. Try and get it from me. Good luck. I will own nothing and be happy regardless of you. Because I already own nothing. Just being happy is good. I can position myself to deal with anything that is coming, whether it's a financial crisis, a banking crisis, a government crisis, or this whole thing continues to continue on, and you have separation between the rich and the poor through the debt issuance and money printer. And if I don't position myself accordingly for it, it's my fault. I see it happening, right? I can blame the New World Order and deteriorate my life and say, here, I proved it to myself that they caused this pain and suffering to me. Or I can look at them and say, screw you guys, you are not holding me back. You're not going to dictate what it is that I'm going to do. You're not going to tell me what it is that I will own and be happy with. It doesn't work like that. It never has and it never will. And anybody who falls victim to that is falling victim to the New World Order. Congratulations, they are winning. Moving on. All right. There is something we can do after we understand the problem. I control my income and my expenses, my life choices. I don't worry about what I can control. It's very liberating. I think people would be better off with the mindset, life is too short. Absolutely it is. There's certain things in this life that you can't control, right? Recognize that. Recognize there are things in this world that you cannot control. You need the power to accept that, right? There are things in this life that you can change. Hope that you have the power to recognize the difference between that, right? There are things in this world you can't change. You have to accept it. There are things in your life you can change. Have the power to recognize the difference between those two. All right. Ownership of the means of production and distribution will make you happy, nothing less. All right. Thoughts control cowards. All right. Half of these capitalistic people hide behind their money. But are they being deported to Mexico? Could just call it a labor program and send the worker with the skills directly to the area of the new factory, regardless of the citizenship. I'm just saying, you know. All right. One of my brothers is a sovereign citizen. He is poor because of it. I play the game differently and exploit the legal options. It works for me. I mean, here's the thing about it is that most people who recognize it then try to conduct themselves in a way that says, man, I am not going to be part of the system. I'm not going to have insurance. I'm not going to have a driver's license. I'm not going to have any of that stuff. I can walk around being completely free from government 100% of the time. And then they find that they can't do anything that other people are doing. And and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if that's really the way to play this game. Right? Like, I know how it is that I can conduct myself so that I don't have authority coming to me. Like, I'm the highest authority. The authority doesn't come to me, right? Because I don't conduct myself in a way that says, hey, man, we need to know who you are, where you've been, what you've done, identifying yourself, all that. No, no, that's not the way this game works, right? Because I don't conduct myself in a way that says you can do that. You don't have authority over me like that. I hold the highest authority. And until I've conducted myself in a way that says you need to identify me by articulating a crime that I've committed, committing, or about to commit, there is no consensual conversation taking place. I am the highest authority. Get out of here. Right? And that's honestly the way I feel about it. But in the meantime, if I'm going to drive this vehicle, which seems to be registered with the state, and they have part ownership inside of this, regardless of who has their name on the title of it, right? Then I have to register it. I have to carry insurance. I have to have a driver's license. It has to be registered with all the things. I have to follow those rules because this vehicle isn't necessarily belonging to me, considering that I have a certificate of the title. I don't have a title. It's a certified piece of paper that says the title exists out there. But I don't own this vehicle outright in that sense, very much like people don't own property or anything else. And knowing that to be the case, unless I want to deal with authority in a way that is going to then prevent me from driving, prevent me from, having all things that involve them and their issuance and their permitting and all that other stuff, if I want to create that to be a hassle, then I have to fall in line. Recognizing that to be the case, I understand that I am giving up freedom in order to have this vehicle. And that's what's happening here. I have to. This vehicle, no matter whose name is on that title, does not belong to me entirely. I have the right to do whatever I want with it, but I don't have the right to drive it on the road because I have a certificate of title that certifies there's a title that exists out there, but it ain't the one. It ain't the Lloydal title. It ain't the manufacturer's statement of origin. That's different. Work is for migrants. Americans create debt for the world to consume. Try and keep up America. That's interesting. Well, heck yeah. Right? Learning the whole sovereign citizen thing and understanding it in a way that not necessarily you have to conduct yourself in that way, but when you understand it in a way that you might be able to conduct yourself in it, then you just kind of conduct yourself differently anyway. I literally, I won't even so much as like jaywalk, right? Because if I jaywalk, then an officer sees that, well, then now he can stop me, identify me, tell me I broke a city ordinance, do all that other stuff. But I understand laws differently than a lot of people. Like, I see people open carry in my town. I'm thinking, is that gun loaded? That's illegal, City Ordinance 5.010 clearly dictates that the open carry of a loaded firearm within the city limits of Astoria is illegal. You can carry the firearm. It just can't be loaded, right? See, there's no law that can be created that violates the Constitution. There's no law that says you can't carry that firearm. Carry it all day long. But if it's loaded, then now you're breaking City Ordinance 5.010. That's clearly a violation of the law, right? They can't stop you from carrying your firearm. That's the difference. The constitutional right still prevails, regardless. But if that firearm is loaded, now you're breaking the city ordinance. So you can legally transfer your firearm from one private location to another and not be harassed for doing it, right? You just have to know the laws. And if I was stopped and I wouldn't open carry within the city limits, because I don't see any reason to on the mean streets of Astoria that you would need to open carry a firearm. It just doesn't make any sense, right? And I don't have any problems with people conceal carrying. And in fact, I wish more people would, right? Because if more people would conceal carry, I feel a hell of a lot safer anyway. That's just honestly the way I feel. I don't carry firearms. I just don't do that. I just don't feel the need to do it in the area I live. Because again, the mean streets of Astoria, why would you need one? There is no situation that arises in which that would be an occurrence of like necessity. It just doesn't happen here. Now, give it time, maybe the things will change, but at this point, that's the way I feel about it. And so as I understand the laws and understand the situation and understand everything that how I would conduct myself, I don't look at firearms in the laws that are created as a burden to me. I just don't see it. Other people find it to be a burden to them, and they're like, oh man, they're taking our rights away. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. They didn't take any of my rights away. Right? They didn't take a single right from me away. Like, I still own all my firearms. I still conduct myself the way that I did. There is no changes to the way that I'm behaving or conducting myself. I don't understand what it is that people are talking about. Right? Because I have constitutional right. So, I mean, when I'm over there in my home, right? Unless you got a warrant, I don't know what it is that we're doing here. Like, there's no consensual conversation. Get the hell out of here. You know? All right. Americans will turn in their guns for crypto. No, they won't. Americans will not turn in their guns for anything, right? They will not. They won't. In fact, if you have that sort of announcement, they will load up on guns. They will actually go out there and invest in more of them. All right. All people fall under 3 types: sheep, wolves, and sheepdogs. Yeah, people are left brain or right brain. That's it. Or so the changes be seen in the economy. They are left brain dominant or right brain dominant. That's human beings. And what sits on the mountainside? Do you think the Fed will cut rates? I think that it will deliver a message with it, and whatever that message is that is delivered with it will have an impact on the economy that'll either be a tightening or a loosening of financial conditions, because they know the specific words and sentences to use that will alter the asset prices. That's what I think. The interest rate adjustment is not the important tool. The communication, the message that is delivered with it is. Right? That's going to be the profound impact on the economy. If you're looking for an easing or tightening of financial conditions, it's going to come from the message that is delivered with the interest rate adjustment, not the interest rate adjustment itself. We've already witnessed it in the past that an interest rate adjustment doesn't necessarily have the impact on the economy like people would have anticipated. Already you're seeing mortgage rates and U.S. 10-year treasuries and these assets coming down in interest on yield, right? The financial conditions are getting easier and the Fed hasn't moved. That's because of the message that they have delivered with it. If they deliver a message with this interest rate cut of one of concern, that they are trying to protect the economy from harm, then you will find disinflationary pressures and a tightening of financial conditions as a result. Right? If they are generally supporting the economy, you'll generally find easing of conditions. I want to find that speech. Let me see if I can, where that is, because this is so important. Most people are focused in, just like you were asking, like, what is the interest rate going to do? Because they want it to be systematic. They want 1 + 1 = 2. When the Fed cuts interest rates, this is what happens, right? And that's not the case. That is simply, I mean, I know you want it to be that way, but that's not the way it is. So wish and hope and dream for it to be that way. It'll never be like that. Let me see if I can figure this out. Let me see, is this it? So I found future actions should be based on the careful assessments of ongoing sustained progress in achieving our goals. We must be clear in our communication about how further changes are intended to the effect of economic conditions. Is this it? This is okay. See, here's something that, like, I don't know how many people recognize this from back in the day, But I had talked about this. This was January 9th of 2025, and this is Michelle Bowman. Reflections of 2024 Monetary Policy, Economic Performance, and Lessons on Banking Regulations. And you got to think, this is at the beginning of the year. And this is what it says. The target range now reflects 100 basis points of cuts since September, and the policy rate is now closer to my estimates of neutral level, which is higher than before the pandemic. And so we have to think about it. This was 6 months ago, better, so almost 9 months ago, right? Yeah, 9 months ago that this was stated. Now, over the course of the last 9 months, the neutral interest rate has continued to rise off of the elevated inflation expectations from the tariff, right? So tariffs impacting the idea that there's going to be inflationary scenario that has risen or caused the neutral interest rate to rise. We just learned about that from Powell's speech, saying that it's now 100 basis point closer than over the last 6 months or something like that. So we know that it's ever increasingly closer to the neutral, or that the neutral interest rate is getting closer to the Fed funds rate. All right, it says here, in the meantime, given conflicting economic signals, measurement challenges, and significant data revisions, I remain cautious about taking signals from only a limited set of real-time data releases. And so this is something that I think is very concerning when people look at like jobs data that comes out and say, oh man, the Fed has to move off of this new jobs data. And I'm like, I don't know if the Federal Reserve is necessarily even looking at that data. Right? I mean, she kind of said it, and remains cautious about taking signals from only a limited set of real-time data releases. So again, like the people are like, oh, the Fed's going to move because of this. And I'm like, well, I don't know if the Fed is necessarily even looking at that. Right? She goes on, future actions should be based on a careful assessment of ongoing and sustained progress in achieving our goals. And we must be clear in our communication about how further changes are intended to affect economic conditions. All right? We must be clear in our communications about the further changes, or how further changes are intended to affect economic condition. She goes on to say this, I also continue to be concerned that the current stance of policy may not be as restrictive as others may see it. See, the economy was far less restricted than anybody had given it consideration for, and this is months ago. See, people wonder why we didn't have a recession, why unemployment isn't rising significantly. Oh, the labor market is a cause for concern, but the economy is far less restricted than anybody had ever considered it. She said it. I also continue to be concerned that the current stance of policy may not be as restrictive as others may see it. Given the ongoing strength in the economy, it seems unlikely that the overall level of interest rates and borrowing costs are providing meaningful restraint. How many people recognize that? Right? How many people were saying, man, the neutral interest rate is rising, making it ever less restrictive on the economy because it's moving closer to the Fed funds rate? This is not necessarily an easing of financial conditions, but it's far less restrictive than anybody gave it consideration for. I mean, Michelle Bowman mentioned it back in, almost 9 months ago, but did anybody internalize it for that? Absolutely not. Okay. All right. No, you won't. You will rather give food to the family just so they can eat. Only a smart one. Yeah, hit that like button like Cheech and Chong. Thank you very much, All Nighter. I appreciate it. What are your opinion on gold prices in the coming months? My opinion of it is really inconsequential to my decision making on what's happening with gold, because gold is an insurance policy against a third party claim. Whether the price is up or down or sideways makes really little difference to me. The only difference to me is how many ounces do I have, right? That's the difference. That's where the important part comes in. Because if you look at gold as like some kind of asset that's going to go up in price, like to me, I don't have that sort of thought when it comes to gold, right? Like if I'm going to make money, then I'm going to do it in something that is actually going to have a return to it, something with a dividend paying stock or a company, or rental property or something of that nature. Like that's where my mind goes if I want to have a return on my investment. To put it into a dumb asset, and I don't mean to call the individual who buys it dumb, but that's essentially what they call it on the investment community, is that it's a dumb asset because it doesn't have a return to it, in the sense that it doesn't pay dividend, it doesn't pay rent, it's not a business that's going to grow and, have a something that it provides as far as a product or service or something of that nature. It's not like that. It's just an item that sits on the shelf, and then one day you hope to sell it for a higher price. So this is the greater fool theory. I just don't look at it like that. I just don't. Right? Other people get wishful and hopeful that it's going to go up in price and that they'll sell it and then they'll be able to buy Lambos or something with it. Okay, that's cool. There was a time in my life I thought of it that way and it didn't work out too well. But when I think of it as an insurance policy, it works every single time. Right? So I'm thinking, okay, I can put my money towards something else that is going to actually have a return to it. And I will use gold and silver as savings, as my insurance policy. And it works really well for that. So in my opinion, I don't want it to go up. I don't necessarily want it to go down. I don't care. All I care about is how many ounces I have. How much can I stack? That's the important thing to me. That's the only thing that's important about it. All right? Because if you're going to use it as an insurance policy, you have to have it, regardless of what price you paid for it. Yeah. So for me personally, I would love to see it go down. I would love to see the paper manipulation game continue to impact the silver price, driving it down so that I can continue to load up on it until I am 80 years old, and then I want it to go up to $1,000 an ounce. That's what I wish and hope and dream and pray for. And it's very low on my wish and hope and dreams. All right, keep stacking, my friends. Absolutely deplorable. All right. See, this is that's what I love about gold and silver, is that my expectations of it are almost non-existent, and my belief in it as an insurance policy is absolutely I can't think of anything else that would be more of an insurance policy than silver and gold. Like literally nothing. There's nothing out there. I mean, for a lesser extent, there's some pretty good things that people could substitute in its place, like firearms or maybe like cryptocurrencies on a lesser extent. But they don't compare. They don't even come close. All right. Hello, all-nighter. How are you doing today? Deplorable up in the house. Infamous. The lending rates and requirements on BTC is predatory. 6 months is just as long as it takes an actual adjustment to work its way through the system. Markets to stabilization or stabilize too, whereas news drops have immediate effect on the markets. Yep. Keep stacking, always. Is my understanding. No, I think you got that pretty well, Josh or Justin. I don't believe in credit. Well, I believe in cash. And the unfortunate part about not believing in credit is that we don't live in a society in which that you can do that. We don't live in an economy in which you can do that. Like, I don't believe in credit, I'm not going to use it. Well, then you're going to get left behind. Every single rich person that I know, like personally, through the YouTube, Rebel Capitalist, all those other things, every single one of them did it with real estate. They all did it with leverage from finance. Every one of them. Like, we can reinvent the wheel and say, hey, we can be rich in different ways and be really egotistical about that, and then build up these walls of prevention that says we're not going to use finance to do it, and then essentially not be able to. But every single rich person I know, they all did it with leverage from finance in real estate. Like all of them. So we don't have to be rich. Hello from Quebec. Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Thank you, friend. CL? Yeah, you bet, man. I'm glad people come out here and we break this stuff down. You know, if you really, really, really want some good information, next time the Fed speech comes out that I'm going to do in a member-only live stream, join in on that. Like, the member-only live stream videos are way good. They're really good. They're first of all, they're full of people who truly want to be there to get the information, and so the discussion about it is really focused in on the topic, right? And it doesn't really, I mean, sometimes it deviates, but for the most part, we stay very topic focused, and really break it down in a way that the average everyday person can really understand. I mean, obviously, you have to be in this understanding somewhat in order to grasp a Federal Reserve speech. But if you're getting into this information, trying to figure out how it is that you're supposed to internalize it so that you can make decisions for yourself, the member-only live streams, I have like 50 videos out there. They break down Fed speeches. They are super, super good stuff. And really, it's $1 a month. So, like, how can you go wrong? Like, it's like, it's, $12 a year. Like, how much could it like possibly cost? So it's a great way to get into like the monetary policy, break down the discussions, have a really good conversation within the live streams. And yeah, I can't brag them up enough. I mean, just look at some of the comments that come from some of the people who are members. I mean, they all say it. And the more people I get to join the members only, the more I want to do member only live streams. All right. And I'm going to find like myself probably gearing a lot more towards the member only live streams, just because the new monetary policy is going to be very impactful to people's lives. And whether or not we have the credible threat of possible economic outcomes like that of tariffs, interest rate adjustments, all this other stuff, positioning yourself ahead of time, knowing how it is that they use that credible threat, is very unique to this channel. I mean, most people don't have any idea that they are using the communications in the fashions that they are. When they communicate and I recognize how it impacts the economy, and I come out here and I'm like, look at what they're doing right here. Look at what they're doing right now. See how it's impacting the mortgage market. See how they're doing all this stuff. And they haven't even adjusted rates yet. This is the credible threat theory at work. Even the idea of tariffs. Look at what it did, right? It caused a bunch of inflationary pressures within the economy, and now you have a rising neutral interest rate at the exact same time that the possibility of tariffs are going to get removed. If that is to take place, I mean, think about the rocket ship on the economy can happen for the economy if you were to have a neutral interest rate move ever closer to the Fed funds rate, have the Fed actually cut interest rates to neutral or possibly past neutral at the same time they alleviate the credible threat of tariffs, and have all this like free-flowing economy again. Like, it's free-flowing, but you get what I'm saying. Is like all of a sudden relinquishing the pressures of that. Think about how rocket ship of an economy can take off after that. Like, there would be massive investment, massive people like, starting to, move, and that have been pent up, essentially waiting and seeing to find out what happens with the credible threat of it. See, that's something, isn't that incredible to think? That if they did, like, it's a big what if, but it's a huge what if. Right? Middle of October, to find out whether or not the Supreme Court is going to allow these tariffs to go through. And if they don't, does all that money have to be refunded? And if it does, who is going to get refunded? Right? I mean, you think about it, they've already passed a lot of this cost on to the retailer, because the retailer is essentially the retail customer. The customer is essentially who pays the tariff. I don't care if you say, oh no, them paying and all that. No, it all goes down to the cost of the consumer. The consumer pays it at the end of the day. That's who does. Right? So if all this cost gets passed down to the consumer, and then all of a sudden the consumer has paid all these tariff costs, and then you alleviate the tariffs and say, oh, sorry, you have to get reimbursed, the retailer doesn't get reimbursed. So this is like a double whammy for the corporations out there, to get paid not only from increasing their prices on the credible threat of tariffs, but then also get reimbursed from it. Oh, that's pretty cool for it, man. I never really thought a president would do that for the corporations out there, but this president did it. It was like, oh yeah, right. I mean, I didn't think a president would do that. This president, I believe, would do that. Okay, hold on. The talking head says that the companies have been absorbing the tariffs. That's why we haven't had tariff inflation, remember? Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why everybody keeps coming to me and telling me from a retail standpoint, man, this tariff inflation is really killing us, isn't it? What is it that the people are believing from it? What are they doing? Like, you know how many people I heard raise the cost of lumber prices or raise the price of lumber because of the credible threat of tariff on Canadian lumber? It didn't manifest itself. There is definitely input cost that is going into it. Now, whether it's real or really being noticed or really happening in a profound manner, I don't care what it is that the president has said. There is nothing that is truthful that is coming from him in any way, shape, or form. It's 100% credible threats in every sense of the imagination. There is no truthfulness coming there. Right? The reality of the situation is much different in the idea that the credible threat of tariffs is creating an inflation expectation that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The harder you push that inflation expectation, the more of a result it will have on the economy. You are finding the neutral interest rate is rising on account of this, and the economy is far less restricted. Like, all these things are taking place. It's not just me. I mean, you can find this within the literature of the Federal Reserve. Like, I'm just stating exactly what the Federal Reserve is saying. So whether or not people are like, well, the president said this, and I'm like, I don't care what that president says. He can write letters that says people are fired. He can say that there's 150 million tariffs on all these different corporations and stuff like that out there. He can say anything he wants, right? It doesn't mean the reality is going to be there from it. People's reaction to it, that's real. People really believe that. I don't. Like, I just don't. Like, that man opens his mouth and I'm thinking there's nothing but garbage flying out of that. There is no usefulness that comes from that. Nothing. Literally nothing. Right? It's like listening to Biden. Right? There's nothing that's useful that comes from that stuff. Except for confusion, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Credible threats that pushes the guidance, pushes the markets around. That is useful, and if you can recognize it, then you can make use of it. But there's no useful information that comes from that outside of the credible threat and then the impact it has on the economy and how it is that you can position yourself in accordance for that. Right? That's how it's useful, but not the actual context of it. That is not useful at all. Just the how the people feel about the message that is being delivered. That part is useful. Yeah. But he doesn't have anything useful to say. Yeah. I mean, he can open his mouth and just like, just like Obama had nothing useful to say. That dude would open his mouth and doves would fly out and everybody would be like, oh my God, he is such a beautiful person. Oh, she's wonderful. And I'm thinking, do you see the economic results that came from that administration? That dude is not a beautiful person. Not even close, right? He did more damage to the lower class of people. He caused more inequality than the history of any president ever could, right? And it's not him. It was just the timing, right? It wasn't even him who was doing it. It just happens to be the timing within the banking system that we are now living, right? He just happened to be a messenger at the time. And when he opened his mouth, everybody just like, I just loved how people just like, oh my God, he is so awesome. So lucky to have him there, and I'm like, yeah, you guys are going to suffer from that. And they do. They're out there with signs right now picketing, right? It's his fault, and I'm thinking, do you ever think maybe it was that dude with the all those wonderful comments and all the beautiful things that he said that led you right into the inequality you now face today? No? Oh, okay. Well, whatever. Yeah, blame whoever you want. It's pretty easy to confuse the financial illiterate. It really is. Trust me, poor people aren't stupid. You're right. They're not. They are actually got a mental disorder that is keeping them from actually being successful in their life. It's called a scarcity mindset. It's unfortunate for them, right? Because it literally is. It's a mental issue that's happening within them. They feel that there is no hope. They don't feel that they are in a position in which that they have any chance, and that the opportunity is somehow right around the corner, and therefore they will never see it for themselves today because it's always out there somewhere. You're not right. I am right, and it's. you can't do anything about Trump. He hasn't been a fixture of American culture for years. He has been. Oh, sorry. Trump is American as apple pie. U.S. without Trump is like Elvis without Priscilla. U.S. without Trump is like cake without icing. I disagree. I'm going to disagree with that. I don't know if Trump has anything that is going to be anything that is going to be benefit. If he was not here, would make any difference. If that dude did not exist, it wouldn't make any difference. Right? Other than possibly the message that you are getting, like the hearing of it, it's just like, but the outcome wouldn't be any different. There would just be somebody else just like him being there doing the same thing. You know? He's no different. He's nobody special. All right. What corporation is going to build infrastructure that will not even be built by the time the Democrats get back into office? That doesn't make any sense. Sorry, deplorable. I have no idea what it is you're trying to communicate there. Trump base is just racist losers. And Jose is unfortunately going to misunderstand what it is that needs to be done inside of his life as well, because he's put a racist mindset on the Trump administration and therefore cannot see it any other way. Right? Like, he's not racist. I don't know where people get that. Right? I don't see it that way. Like, maybe other people see it that way. I don't see it that way. You know? People see Obama as some kind of peace. He won like the Nobel Peace Prize. This is the same dude who admitted that he was pretty good at killing people. What? This is the same dude who won the Nobel Peace Prize? Is the same guy who communicates that he was pretty good at killing people? That's weird, isn't it? I mean, I guess it's all in the meaning that you give it. Boy watches The View for news, another son husband victim. Whether, like most Christians, Americans, I believe in letting Israel build the third temple, well, I feel bad for the people that have to die. The third temple must be built. Interesting. Yeah. They gave Bernanke the Nobel Peace Prize too. Yeah, again, right? I mean, this is where I'm kind of getting at. It was just like, I'm like, this is the way that people have given meaning to this. Yeah. Bernanke got the Nobel. Surprisingly, Bernanke was pretty, like, here's the thing. Most people would use the belief system that Bernanke is a liar, he's stupid, doesn't know what he's doing, screwed the American people over. And when I go back and I read through Bernanke's words, it's not like he didn't tell you he was going to do this. I mean, just think about gold. When he talked about deflation and how to prevent it from occurring here in the United States, that was a speech given 6 years before the great financial crisis that articulated exactly what they were planning on doing. It's not like he didn't tell you, because people chose not to listen because they called him an idiot. So I'm not listening to that idiot. And not like not listening to Biden not being an idiot because you couldn't understand anything he was saying. I'm saying this dude was telling you straight up what it was that they were about ready to do. And people said, don't listen to this guy. He's an idiot. And then it happened. And then people were like, oh, this is such a surprise. And I'm like, really? Like, I'm going back and I'm reading the documents that the Federal Reserve was communicating prior to the great financial crisis. And they straight up said what it was that they were planning on doing for that crisis situation. And then people said, man, the Federal Reserve is just making this shit up. And I'm like, no, they're not. Right? No, they're not. They are very well communicating what it is that they plan on doing with the next crisis situation, and people choose not to listen. That's a difference. There is a huge difference inside of that. I don't have any respect for Ben Bernanke to be like some magic man and central banker who really understood what it was he was doing. What I am trying to say is that he very well communicated what it was that they were planning on doing for the great financial crisis well ahead of time. Well ahead of time. And so people chose not to listen to it. That's their fault, right? That's not Bernanke being like, some idiot or bad guy or anything else. Because he didn't explain it as it was going down didn't mean that he didn't explain it before it happened. Right? And then people were like, well, explain it to me again. And they were like, if we did that, then our credible threats wouldn't work. Our forward guidance wouldn't work. Right? Quantitative easing wouldn't work. We can't explain it to you again. Right? We have to use that power against you in order to create the economic environment that they are looking for. But it's not like they didn't say they weren't going to do it. Right? I mean, they straight up told you. Go read that speech. Deflation, how to prevent it from ever occurring here. November of 2002. Now, hold on, I'll tell you. I'll tell you when it was. It was November 21st, 2002. Deflation, making sure it doesn't happen here. One of the greatest speeches you could ever read. Totally described the great financial crisis before it ever occurred. And the reasons why. From the Fed funds rate hitting the lower bound. All right? Preventing deflation. I have already emphasized deflation is generally the result of low or falling aggregate demand, right? That's 80% of the people, falling aggregate demand. The top 20%, they're increasing their aggregate demand. I emphasize deflation is generally the result of low and falling aggregate demand. The basic prescription for preventing deflation is therefore straightforward, at least in principle. Use monetary and fiscal policy as needed to support aggregate spending in a manner as nearly consistent as people with a full utilization of economic resources in low and stable inflation. In other words, the best way to get out of trouble is to not get into it in the first place. Beyond this common sense injunction, however, there are several measures the Fed or any central bank can take to reduce the risk of falling into deflation. First, the Fed should try to preserve a buffer zone for inflation rate. That is, during normal times, it should not try to push inflation down all the way to zero. Most central banks seem to understand the need for a buffer zone. For example, central banks with explicit inflation targets almost invariably set their target inflation above zero, generally between 1% and 3% per year. Maintaining an inflation buffer zone reduces the risk for that large unanticipated drop in aggregate demand will drive the economy far enough into deflation territory to lower the nominal interest rate to zero. Of course, this benefit of having a buffer zone for inflation must be weighed against the cost associated with lowering a higher inflation rate into normal times. Right? So he's describing it right there to try and create an inflationary scenario, even if you're getting close to the lower bound of zero. That's the attempt. That's what they were attempting to do. Right? Do whatever it takes to get it there. He goes on to say this: the Fed should take most seriously, as of course it does, its responsibility to ensure financial stability in the economy. Fisher in 1933 was perhaps the first economist to emphasize the potential connections between violent financial crisis, which led to a fire sale of assets and falling asset prices, with general declines in aggregate demand and the price levels. A healthy, well-capitalized banking system and smoothly functioning capital markets are important line of defense against deflationary shocks. The Fed should and does use its regulatory and supervisory powers to ensure that the financial system will remain resilient and financial conditions change rapidly. At times of extreme threat to financial stability, the Federal Reserve stands ready to use the discount window and other tools to protect the financial system, as it did during 1987 stock market crash and the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. You see, like they were planning for this situation. This is 2002, years before the great financial crisis. They knew it was coming. They were planning for it. They were getting ready for it. He goes on to talk about it. He talks about the issues that they were going to face. He says this: as I have indicated, I believe that the combination of strong economic fundamentals and policymakers that are attentive to the downside as well as upside risk to inflation makes significant deflation in the United States in the foreseeable future quite unlikely. But suppose that despite all the precautions, deflation were to take hold in the United States economy, and moreover that the Fed's policy instrument, the Fed funds rate, were to fall to zero. That was the great financial crisis. Suppose that was to happen. What would they do then? Well, they knew. They knew it was coming. He said it straight up, right? What happens when their deflation becomes so severe the Fed funds rate were to fall to zero? What then? In the remainder of my talk, I will discuss some possible options for stopping deflation once it has gotten underway. I should emphasize that my comments on this topic are necessarily speculative, as the modern Federal Reserve has never faced a situation, nor has it pre-committed itself formally to any specific course of action should deflation arise. Furthermore, the specific response the Fed would undertake would presumably depend on the number of factors, including its assessment of the whole range of risks to the economy and any complementary policies being undertaken by other parts of the U.S. government. They knew it was happening. They knew it was coming. He was planning for it years ahead of time. He says, okay, what's going to happen when deflation starts to take a hold and pushing the Fed funds rate all the way to zero when there's no more further room for adjustment? They knew it was coming. They knew it in 2002. He has a whole speech about it. This is years before, the financial crisis doesn't take place for another 6 years after this. Yeah. This stuff is so good. Like when you read this stuff, you start to realize, man, Ben Bernanke was warning the people. They didn't listen. In fact, the mainstream media said, don't listen to that dude. The narrative was, don't listen. He doesn't know what he's doing. And I'm thinking, man, if you don't listen to him, then you're not heeding the warning. Right? I have mentioned some observers have concluded that when the central bank's policy rate falls to zero, its practical minimum, monetary policy loses its ability to further stimulate aggregate demand and the economy. At a broad conceptual level, and in my view, in practice as well, this conclusion is clearly mistaken. Indeed, under a fiat, that is paper money system, and government, in practice, with the central bank in cooperation with other agencies, should always be able to generate increased nominal spending and inflation, even when the short-term nominal interest rate is at zero. Now, understanding this is absolutely key to understanding the current monetary policy, because at this point, the Federal Reserve was no longer using interest rate adjustments for their monetary policy. You got to think, this is 2002. This is 23 years ago. Over 2 decades ago, they said, man, monetary policy with interest rate adjustments isn't going to be the future tool that we need. That ain't going to work for us anymore. They told us 2 decades ago, before the great financial crisis. Bernanke was explaining it. He says, when the Fed funds rate hits zero, no more downward adjustment is achievable, yet there is monetary policy. What is that monetary policy? If the Fed can't adjust interest rates anymore, what is it they could possibly use? How is it that the Federal Reserve could ever possibly conduct a monetary policy unless they adjust the interest rates? It doesn't make sense. If you ask anybody today, the very question they're going to ask is, what's going to happen with the Fed funds rate? Are they going to adjust rates? And I'm thinking, is that the effective monetary policy tool? No, it sure isn't. The effective monetary policy tool is coming from their words. He explains it right here. Let me explain it again. Let me read it again. Indeed, at a broad conceptual, let me go back to the very beginning here. Some observers have concluded that when the central bank's policy rate falls to zero, its practical minimum, monetary policy loses its ability to further stimulate aggregate demand and the economy. It hits zero, no more downward adjustment. All right? And he says, in conclusion, that the deflation is always reversible under a fiat system follows from some basic economic reasonings. This is what he goes into to describe for the monetary policy tool to deal with the fact that the Fed funds rate was no longer in an adjustable position to stimulate the economy because of the zero lower bound, right? Can't use it anymore. Doesn't work. Fed says that's okay. We don't need to adjust interest rates. A little parable may prove useful. Today, an ounce of gold sells for $300 more or less. Now, suppose that a modern alchemist solves his subject's oldest problem by finding a way to produce unlimited amounts of new gold at essentially no cost. Moreover, his invention is widely publicized and scientifically verified, and he announces his intention to begin massive production of gold within days. What would happen to the price of gold? Presumably, the potentially unlimited supply of cheap gold would cause the market price of gold to plummet. Indeed, if the market for gold is to any degree efficient, the price of gold would collapse immediately after the announcement of the invention before the alchemists had produced and marketed a single ounce of the yellow metal. You see that? The credible threat of a machine that produces gold that is scientifically verified and widely publicized would cause the price of gold to plummet even before the machine was invented, before he even had it. Right? Just the fact that he could do it would be enough. Credible threats. That is the credible threat theory, the heart of it right there. And it works for him. It's working today. Just think about it. Like the Fed hasn't done anything. The Fed has barely moved at all. Look where interest rates go based on their idea of them cutting into the future. Mortgage rates come down. Gold machine. Right? It could, if I could wave a magic wand and suddenly become the boss of it all, I would grab society by its lazy, apathetic, and I would be singing Queens, We Will Rock You. Stop shifting the blame and pointing the finger at everybody else. Do yourself a favor, take responsibility, stand up and be a man. When Trump gets angry about the Fed, Reserve, and Powell, look out. It's like something out of an old action movie. Who says Americans don't like action movies anymore? President gonna grab... Yeah. Chill out on the like, I cuss sometimes, but we got to like really be careful in the comment section, just because the algorithm doesn't like a lot of the stuff in there. Say whatever you want, but just understand that it's damaging to the channel. Right? Anything that is QCW report coming up in Waller's comments on them. Also considering Waller being listed as a potential Fed chair. I think probably Waller's up at the front of possibilities. Feel like I need to start reading a bunch of Waller transcripts. Yeah, there's a bunch of speeches out there from Waller. I mean, we've covered a few of them in the member-only live streams, but, you know, I would assume that Waller would be, like, probably, if I was to pick any of them, like, I would put him at the front of the line, right? Like, I mean, it could be anybody, really, but in my opinion, I would think Waller would be like in the best position to take chair. Not that it would change anything. As long as everybody is pessimistic, I don't see any crash coming. It's very unprofessional to share images and say particular slangs on the job site. That is what we're witnessing coming from the DC at the moment. Most of us would be fired from our job. Oh, right on, Jesse. Thank you so much for the $19.99. It says, I bought property this year. Confidence. Oops. Let me put my glasses on here. Okay. Confidence from your teaching. I used to be a big prepper and thought another great financial crisis was coming, but you convinced me otherwise. What are your views on potential massive change AI likely to bring in 2027? I don't try to be that kind of predictive on what kind of massive changes like AI is going to bring. Like, I don't know how many people. So Generation X is a nice generation because we were there before the internet. Like, we grew up without the internet, and then we got to take advantage of the internet in its infancy as it started to really grow up. I look at, like, younger people today, in their 20s, and they never had a life outside of access to the internet. right? And so therefore they never really had an understanding of what it was like without internet to what it is to having internet and all the awesomeness that actually comes from having access to the internet. And so inside of that, like if you could think of all the possibilities prior to the dot-com bubble, of what the internet was going to do into the future, man, you could really position yourself really well for it. But nobody at the time realized, like some people had some vision for it, but for the most part, I don't think people realized what it was going to do or how it was going to change society or the benefits and downfalls from it in the level to what it is we are achieving today. Some people might have really been able to see it well. For me, I don't look to what it could possibly do. I just kind of, what does it doing? You know, um, just as simple as like using Grok or GPT, right? Chat GPT. I use it in a way not to do research necessarily, but to confirm my theories and understanding. Like I will start asking Grok or ChatGPT particular questions about the credible threat theory without actually explaining the credible threat theory to then see if I could get them to confirm what it is that I have been thinking and saying about the economy and believing about it. You know, like one of the things that I like to do is throw misinformation about particular things to see if it gets corrected, right? To see if they can correct the idea that I had thrown at it. Some of these, some of the ways that I do that, I then hone my skills of debate, like trying to figure out whether or not manufacturing can come back to the United States, whether or not the monetary policy was truly achieving a 2% target or was it achieving moderately above 2%. The results to the economy, regardless of COVID or a makeup strategy, essentially was the same, right? And then arguing these points back and forth to see whether or not my arguments are fact checked accurate. And not always does it come back in a way that is useful. But a lot of times, what I am finding is that the narrative that is being produced from ChatGPT or Grok or something like that is absolutely inaccurate. And if you ask the appropriate questions, you can get them to actually correct the narrative and say, yeah, that is being portrayed out there, but the reality is different, right? And being able to do that, like just to be able to hone your conversation skills on, the idea was just like, well, they bring up these particular talking points. And then it was just like, okay, well, that's very common talking point reaction to some of the things that I have said. Maybe I'll research some of those things and see if I can counter them. And inside of that, I find it really useful, right? Like I find that to be incredibly useful. It may not necessarily be as accurate as, say, in talking to another economist out there, but it does give you the ability to challenge thought, right? Which is pretty cool. Just go back from the grocery store. A gallon of chocolate milk is $6.70 generic. Desmona's, Iowa, for reference. Things will get worse for they with zero assets. AI brings more control, not more freedom or liberty. That's simple. The information is out there, plain to see. Bob, I just don't agree with that. I think that's the issue that most people end up facing as far as a consequence because they truly believe that to be the case. But I don't necessarily believe that you will be like, if you believe that to be the case, then absolutely it will be. Okay? But if you can use AI to then generate income for you that then gives you the ability to do whatever it is that you want with your life, with your time, then that's freedom, right? So the meaning that you have given it is that it's going to be controlling and infringing. And then other people will be like, no, I'm going to give it meaning that it's going to give me an abundance that will then allow me the freedom that I am looking for. So the meaning that you have given it and the meaning that somebody else has given it can be completely different things. And although you say, oh no, man, even though he has that freedom and you list off all the reasons why he's being controlled, if he doesn't believe that on the other side, then he is not being controlled. You are. That's the difference. It's a huge difference inside of it. I don't give it meaning that it's going to control me. If I do, then it will. Guaranteed. I mean, I've proven this to myself many times with the conspiratorial mindset of the New World Order. Right? It's very much in the same lines. All right. This is not a good year to buy property, but if you hold for 10 plus years, it will be. Well, when was the best time to buy a house? Same time it was to plant a tree 20 years ago. It's always 20 years ago, man. You buy now in 20 years, you'll be happy you did. A broken clock is right at least once a day. It's right twice a day. Right? A broken clock is right twice a day. Unless I guess it's on military time then. All right, I heard John Deere and GM shut down production. Yeah, that's not a surprise. Like this point of looking at externals for how they can fit in a good way. maybe the clock was really broken well. Yeah. Alrighty, guys. How long have we been at it? For almost 2 hours now. I love doing live streams, guys. I love coming out and having this discussion and talking and bringing up these points and ideas on what it is that we can do to deal with the fact that things aren't necessarily going to go the way that we are hoping or wishing and dreaming they would. And the expectation that somebody else can come in and make the situation better for you, I think is really naive in belief. Understanding that you can do something for yourself, that you can take advantage of the situation, and knowing that other people are doing it today should give you the encouragement and the hopefulness that there is a better way out there right now. We don't have to wait for the change, and we don't have to expect failure to be part of it. Like, we can know that that is a situation that can come about, but to be in a position to handle the situation as it is, right? To believe that, to know it, that's the key to all this. Being at the whims of somebody else's decision making, it's going to leave you in pain. No doubt. You know? Oh, great. We got a bee again. Why is it that bees love this truck? Flew off, though. We're all okay. All right. It's a good time to be home and able to join again. Right on, all-nighter. A house that you are renting out has to have certain criteria, one which is a good tenant and others is you can cash flow from it. I can't do the numbers on properties around my neighborhood without them being in foreclosure or way out in the sticks. It's hard to get a good tenant out there. I want to buy property, but not for $1 million. Yeah. Money's falling for the sky. Go get it. And that's the thing. Like, I think that's actually, there's a lot of truth in that statement. That money flies everywhere. Like, I don't know how many people actually recognize that money is flying everywhere constantly. And it's the idea of being able to reach out there and grab it. It's kind of like being in the flow, right? Like, how do you get in the flow? It's not hard to be in the flow. Like, getting in the flow is easy. 9-to-5 job, right? You can be right in the flow. The problem with it is that most people take being in the flow as permission to go into debt or to find a reason to let the flow go right past them. I mean, just even something as like expensive subscriptions or something, that adds to your debt or adds to your monthly burden that isn't necessarily debt issuance that takes that flow from you. So once you get into the flow, like a 9-to-5 job, it's a matter of figuring out how to keep it. Like, don't let it flow past you, but to actually acquire it, to collect it. And the more you're in the flow, or the more you're able to keep the flow from moving past you, the more opportunities and options that you have from it. So having a 9-to-5 job, which is the money flowing in, keeping your expenses low, keeping it from flowing out, and then figuring out other channels of avenue to get that flow to come towards you, this is the mindset. Right? And a lot of times people think, oh man, I need a 9-to-5 job. I need this major career. I need this opportunity to make $10,000 a month or all these other things. And I'm thinking, have you ever thought of maybe just figuring out how to make $1 on the internet? Just make $1. Once you learn how to make $1, you'll learn to make $2. That's the important part right there, is learning how to do it. Once you figure out how to do it, now you can really leverage that time up, because if you can do things that will have you making money while you're sleeping, you put a little bit of effort towards something and then it makes money throughout the rest of the day, that's the position you really want to move towards, right? Cash flowing assets, dividend paying stocks, having, passive income in many ways. Bonds do it, right? Now, how it is that you position yourself to be in an abundance of that is really the skill of every individual to learn for themselves. Where is it that you go in order to achieve what it is that you want in your life? Because everybody's going to be unique in that. Nobody's going to be the same. Everybody's going to be different. It's like very simple 3-step process. Cut back on expenses, increase your income, move to cash flowing assets, right? And be disciplined about that. Alrighty, guys, I'm going to call it quits. Oh, did I get another super chat? Did I get all the super chats all-nighter? Let's see. We got that one from Jesse. Thank you so much for the $19.99. I really appreciate it, guys. I don't even think I turned the ad revenue on for this video. I might have to do that after it's uploaded. So I appreciate everybody who's throwing the super chats at the channel today. Tal, it must be done and contracted very well by ethical people, in my opinion. What is he talking about? All right. In my county of New Mexico, the foreclosure list has always been like half a page to a page. This year, it was 4 pages. Yeah. Let's have a great week. Absolutely, let's have a great week. The more money, the more you make, the more they inflate. Yeah, I mean, that's just, I think that's just kind of the way it's going to be, Like even getting stuck in the mindset that $1 used to buy this and now it buys that, and this is the problem that we see. And I'm thinking, no, it's not my problem, because I don't expect it to hold on to any kind of value. I just don't expect it. And when you expect it not to do that, then you don't position yourself to be harmed by it. You position yourself to take advantage of that. Always appreciate your chats. Well, thank you so much, the Bullet Traders. You guys are awesome. I thank everybody for being here. We have 173 people watching with 130 thumbs up, $45.50 in super chats, because you guys are always so generous and helping to support the Uneducated Economist through super chats, through donations, through comments and thumbs up and sharing of the video, and everything that you guys do for the Uneducated Economist. It's just awesome. Being out here breaking this stuff down, having the conversation about it regularly. This is how it is that we internalize this information. A lot of times the confusion and misunderstandings coming from the mainstream media can really just cloud our minds on what it is that we need to do. But if we can stay focused on ourselves, on what it is that we need to do, on the position that we are taking in accordance to what it is that we know from the evidence that we have seen, not only firsthand, but then the understanding of monetary policy from the words of the Federal Reserve itself, it then gives you a much clearer vision on what it is that you need to do regularly. Get out of debt, get into the cash flowing assets, get that new skill set, whatever it is, that next opportunity is right around the corner for you. If you know it's happening, you take advantage of it today, because you don't have to wait for it to happen, right? If you're sitting in that position saying, no, it's right around the corner, switch it around. Say, man, it's here today. I don't need to wait for it to be around the corner, right? That's the scarcity mindset. Thanks, Simon. Coffee's on me. Well, thank you very much, the Bullet Traders, for the $1.99. You guys are very supportive. Position yourself for success. You can change anything from the poorhouse. Oh, you can't change anything from the poorhouse, yeah. Hey, Simon, how much did inflation rates go up or down back in the 50s or 60s? Well, I mean, if you want to compare like life from the 50s and 60s, and you would also have to compare the currency that we were using back then. I mean, if you're talking a silver-based currency, silver and gold-based currency, you're not going to have a whole lot of fluctuation in it. See, here's the thing. I got silver quarters from the 60s, right? So back in the 50s and 60s, you could use one of those silver quarters to buy a gallon of gas, because that's what a gallon of gas would have been selling for, right? But now a gallon of gas is selling for like $4 or $5, right? Depending on where you're at. Now I have a silver quarter from the 1960s that I could go down to the coin store, cash in, get some cash for it, and go down and buy a gallon of gas. So the gallon of gas never really changed, not accordance to the silver price, right? And I think that's where a lot of people say this is where the significance comes in. That if we still had this particular currency, then we wouldn't have a problem with inflationary scenario, right? I guess this is the argument that comes from it. And that's a great argument, and I totally agree. Because if you had the right silver quarter, you wouldn't be facing the inflationary scenarios of dollar destruction, because your silver quarter would still be buying that gallon of gas. In fact, it would be buying a little bit more, right? So this is the argument. We should be using silver and gold. Simple as that. Now, the problem that we don't answer from people who bring this up is that there's something called Triffin's dilemma. Right? See, we're a world reserve currency. And as a world reserve currency, the world is demanding the dollar. See, there's contracts that were written outside of the United States that are due in dollars. Those contracts come due in dollars. That's a demand for dollars. How does the United States, being a responsible custodian of the world reserve currency, then get those dollars out there to the world in order to create an environment that doesn't have the dollar strengthening so much that it causes problems with exports and world trade and everything that goes along with that? So there's a problem that the Fed faces, and that is you have to run trade deficits of an extreme magnitude, importing stuff and exporting dollars, because you need to get those dollars out of the United States. This is Triffin's dilemma. So now, if we're sitting in a position in which that we are the dominating world reserve currency, which gives us this incredibly high standard of living, we get to live off of the production and efforts of the entire globe, and in exchange, we promise them that we are going to pay in the future. So we don't have to do anything, and we get all this benefit of the world's production flowing to us, and in exchange, we send them an empty paper promise. Right? That's the position that we have now taken. So if we decide that, nah, we're not going to do that anymore, and we're going to have gold and silver as our currency, our standard of living then says we're going to import stuff and export gold and silver, and we're going to be broke in a matter of a few weeks. Or we lessen our standard of living and we keep the gold and silver for ourselves, and we all suffer in pain and misery, except those who have the gold and silver. Those people will be doing exceptionally well. And now I'm in a position that I would take advantage of that, but the majority of the people would suffer in pain and misery, and I'm not necessarily hoping that to be the case. So gold and silver as a safe asset or safe currency, or one that doesn't have an inflationary aspect to it, is not something that is going to be safe for the American people. In fact, what it would do is it would drive the American people into pain and misery almost instantly. It's better for you as an American to load up on gold and silver and be positioned with it and not worry about the dollar destruction, because that's going to happen. But if you position yourself with stacks of gold and silver, then your insurance policy of having that physical possession then doesn't damage you from the fiat currency and the unfortunate consequences that come from that. Just look at it and give it different meaning. You can't change. Like, you think about it, people are like, man, we should go back on a gold standard. I'm like, are you sure about that? Because you realize when we were on a gold standard, they confiscated all the gold. You really want that to be the case? You want to go back on a gold standard and have them confiscate all the gold? Because that was the case. There was a gold standard and they confiscated it. They took it all. It wasn't until they ended the gold standard that says, yeah, here, go ahead and have gold now. You can own it. So all these people are like, yeah, we should go back on a gold standard. It's like, no, hell no, I don't want my gold confiscated. Besides, it doesn't matter. I lost it all in an unfortunate boating accident a couple of days ago. You know, so even if I did have it, I wouldn't want to be on a gold standard anyway. Right? Damn boating accidents. Yui, I was just asking. Thanks. No problem, Pop. I mean, I throw a lot of attitude around, and I'm sorry that it comes off that way. It's more towards, it's not towards the individual. It's more towards the idea of it, right? It's the theory behind it, that I end up having the attitude towards. So I'm not directing that to any individual person. It's more of the narrative that is spoken, like we should be on a gold standard. Okay, so let's just take that question, not the person who asked, but just the question in itself, and let's tear that thing apart, right? You know, and so that way, you know, it's not like an individual who's asking. It's not them. It's, you know, it's the theory, the thought, the idea behind it. All right, boating accident. I know the boating is just like, it's a crazy. I have lost so much silver in boating accidents. I don't know why I keep taking it out there. Where's the coffee? Not $2 now. McDonald's coffee. All right. What's your view on the inflation rate tomorrow? I don't know. Like, I don't know. It's probably going to be somewhat elevated. Boating accidents got the poor guy in Jaws. Yeah. Something about bringing on the lake with your, being out on the lake with your guns. Yeah. Guns and silver. It's just, you know, you know, you would think with as many unfortunate boating accidents of such magnitude that have happened to so many different people, you think there would be better precautions for it, but yet it still occurs. You know, it's so weird. You think they would figure out how to keep that from happening? Huh. I don't know. Maybe we should contemplate that idea on how to prevent that. All right. Simon, do another video of your grocery receipts, please. Okay. Yeah, I'll do one next week if I can. Chicken Life, if you pay more than $2 for a cup of coffee, then you're rich. All right. You got it. Gotcha. Yeah, Bob, I do. I mean, I'm serious when I say that. It's just not you, it's the question. You know, it's the question that we're approaching. All right. Are you pricing houses in BTC, Mark? What time is it? We are 2 hours, 7 minutes into it. I think my battery's about ready to die anyway. All right, guys, let's just call it quits for now. This is a good one. We're 2 hours into it, 183 people watching, 137 thumbs up, and $47.40 in super chats. Thank you so much for all the contributions and super chats and support for the channel and everything you guys do. You're awesome. You know, let's keep an eye on this labor market, as the Federal Reserve doesn't necessarily look at the labor market in the fashion that they once did. You know, there was a time in which that a market would have created an inflationary scenario, and they would have tried to raise the unemployment rate in order to bring inflation down. So now here they're in a situation in which that inflation seems to be high. They want inflation to come down, but yet they want to support the labor market at the same time, which might be counterintuitive to the inflation battle. So this is really where I think a lot of times the Federal Reserve, in their old school way of conducting themselves through interest rate adjustments, that's no longer the effective tool, but it seems to be the focus of the people out there. Let's listen to the message that is delivered. With that message that is delivered, we will have a better understanding of what's going to happen within the financial conditions, the financial markets, and we will be able to position ourselves better for that. Now, how you guys figure that part out and what it is that you're supposed to do, I think this is the internal question that all of us have to ask ourselves individually, but we'll get it. Uneducated Economist. You guys love it.